So in this video, I will be going over the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior. This is the first theory of thinking and decision making that we will be learning for our unit. So when we started learning and working online, my expectation of working from home looked kind of like this. Who wouldn't like to work from the comfort of their home and in their PJs, right? But as things have progressed, the reality, for me at least, has been more like this. I would like to believe that I am an efficient and hardworking person who is self motivated, and fortunately or unfortunately, I also am a workaholic. But this has changed over the course of the last 2 months because of several different reasons, one of which I have attributed or thought is related to the use of technology. To begin with, my technological consumption in general is something that I am not proud of. And right now, on an average, I spend 10 hours a day just on my phone, 4 to 5 of which involves me using social media and news applications. So when I realized this and I started feeling lethargic and unproductive, I figured that the best decision to make would be to reduce my technological or my social media and news consumption. And this was like kind of strengthened by the idea that of late a lot of people have been talking about the coronavirus and there's just negative news everywhere. So my attitude towards that behavior, which was cutting off or reducing my consumption of media or negative media, was actually quite strong, right? I did think that this would help me to become more productive and work more efficiently like I usually do. So yeah, so that was my attitude. And when I told my friends that, okay, don't contact me on Instagram because I'm deleting it, they were just like, oh, okay, we don't know how long you're going to last with that. And they kind of just like chuckled and laughed it off. So there was there was apathy, like people didn't really care if I was just like deleting it because I feel like they didn't think I would be able to stick onto it. So the support that I perceived from my friends was not really very positive. And then there's the whole idea that all of my friends use Instagram primarily for communication, to share, what they're doing. So would it be weird for me not to engage in that behavior? And would that potentially cut me off, right? So then my perceived behavioral control, I thought I could delete and maintain not using social media and checking the news so often. And I think, like, I thought I could do it, but I didn't know to what extent. I knew there were limits to my self control. So, all in all, I think my behavioral intention was moderate. It wasn't very strong. Okay, so to begin with, the outcomes. I will tell you the story of success. So I did end up deleting my Instagram and all the news channels or news applications that I had, BBC and South China Morning Post or whatever. So I deleted all of that and I monitored my use of of my phone for the next week and found that it dropped by 3 hours. So it went from 10 hours on an average per day to 7 hours per day. And this was definitely reassuring and I did feel better and more productive during that time. But at the same time, the confession is that I did use, like, I would download and delete in the morning my Instagram, and again, download in the evening again and delete. I feel like not having the app on my phone did help me in some really weird way because literally it would take me 5 seconds to download the app. But in a weird way, it made me feel like I didn't have the compulsion to check my social media. So even though I didn't stick with completely cutting off, it did help. But now I'm back to the same old routine because I feel like I was losing connection. And I also felt like I was living under a rock with not having my news apps because Numbers went from thousands to, I don't know, 100,000 in no time, and I was almost oblivious to that. So yeah, what I just narrated has been in terms of the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior, and that is what I will be outlining next in terms of the theory in itself. But in the meantime, what I have been saying to myself to keep myself motivated and my brain cells going is just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. Okay, so as for the theory itself, the idea behind this theory is that strong intentions and our perceived outcome, if the outcome of the behavior we want to take part in is positive, and there is a strong behavioral intention, we are more likely to engage in that behavior. So positive outcomes and positive behavioral intention. Okay, and there are three different factors that influence our behavioral intention. There is attitude towards the behavior, there's subjective norm, and then there is perceived behavioral control. So Martin Fishbein introduced these two factors first, and then later introduced perceived behavioral control. So the first factor, behavioral attitude or attitude towards that behavior is basically what a person thinks and feels about that behavior. Okay, there are two types of attitudes within this, which is affective attitude. Affect is basically emotions. Okay, so is this behavior enjoyable or not? Is it painful? Is it going to cause you to feel distressed? So these are the emotions. How do you think you will feel if you engaged in this behavior? Okay, and then there's instrumental attitude, which is whether this behavior or engaging in this behavior will be of any benefit to you. Okay, so in the sense with my example of cutting off from social media, is it enjoyable not to be using social media? To an extent. And what is the outcome? The outcome would be that I'd be more productive. And again, the effective and instrumental attitude don't always have to match. Okay, like in this case, the outcome or the benefit of not using my social media is definitely more than the actual process of not feeling enjoyable by not using it. Okay, so there can be some conflict and also compromise with these two attitudes. So the second factor is subjective norm. And subjective norm is basically what the society and our cultures say. What are the rules around that behavior, or what are the expectations around that behavior that our society or culture has? Okay, and also whether there is support, which is consequential to whether it's something that is accepted or not accepted. The second point is whether there is support from our family and friends in order to carry out or execute that behavior. Okay, so there are descriptive norms, which is whether people in our society or culture engage in that behavior. Okay, so for example, for me, my social circle, right, all of them are on Instagram, and all of them are constantly using Instagram. So they are engaging in that behavior. Okay, so that is the descriptive norm. It is normative for them to use Instagram as their primary mode of communication. And then there's the injunctive norms, which is whether there are people in our social group who are encouraging or supporting our behavior or our plan to execute a certain behavior. So for me, it was my friend saying, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Sure, we'll see how long you last. So there wasn't too much support. There wasn't kind of them saying you can't do this, but there was at the same time no over encouragement of that behavior. So it was just kind of neutral. Okay, and then there's finally the perceived behavioral norms, which is how much you think you are in control with executing that behavior or not. Okay, and here again, control beliefs are basically whether you think you have the capability and the confidence to carry out that behavior. Okay, and perceived power is whether you think you have the ability to overcome any struggles or any challenges that come your way with having to execute that behavior. Okay, so all in all, oh, if you have all of these, all of these basically, these factors lead to your behavioral intention. And these behavioral intention, it can be high, medium, or moderate, and low. Okay, so if you have a high behavioral intention, then you are more likely to engage in that behavior. So, in essence, if you look at the whole model, the more positive these factors are, okay, the more or the higher your behavioral intention will be, and the more likely you will be to engage or execute that behavior. On the other hand, if your attitude towards that behavior is negative, the subjective norms aren't really supportive of you, and no one is engaging in that behavior or is going to support you in your engagement with that behavior, and you don't think you're in control, your behavioral intention will be weak, and consequentially, your execution of that behavior will be unlikely. Okay, that's basically the gist of this model, and a lot of it is based on correlation. Okay, what they want to look at is correlation between these variables, and they say that there needs to be a strong and positive correlation between attitude towards behavior and behavioral intention, subjective norm and behavioral intention, perceived behavioral control and behavioral intention. So these three factors need to be positively and significantly correlated with behavioral intention. And behavioral intention needs to be positively and significantly correlated with the final behavior or the future behavior. Okay? So it is all based on correlation, and we know that with correlation, we don't know if it's really going this way or if it can be the other way. There can be bidirectional ambiguity, and it is also not causal, so we don't know for sure that it can apply for every single situation. Okay? But otherwise, it's a pretty thorough theory or model, and I think it is quite applicable to different situations, such as my willingness or my aim to reduce media consumption. Okay? So, with regards to this model, a lot of research involves self-reported data of behavioral and attitudinal measures. Okay, and the example that I'm going to use is is quitting smoking. Okay, so what they usually do, a typical researcher would send out a survey, which is basically you self-reporting, or they could even do an interview. Okay, for the sake of this example, I'm going to use it as a survey. And they will have a question or a statement relating to each component of this model. So for this, and this, and this. So they will have one statement for each of those components. For example here, my statement for attitude is smoking is injurious to my health and I will benefit from quitting. Okay, so that is the statement for attitude. And I could use a 5-point Likert scale, which is basically I strongly agree, I agree, I neither agree nor disagree, I disagree, and I strongly disagree. So strongly disagree would probably have 1 point that I associate to it, okay, and that is how I would score, if you can see here. And if I strongly agree, that means I get 5 points. If I'm neutral, I get 3 points, okay? If I just disagree, I get 2 points. And if I just agree, I get 4 points, okay? So you associate the mark or the number to the statement, okay? So here, smoking is injurious to my health and I will benefit from quitting. So Rose is basically saying that she strongly agrees with the statement, whereas Josie is saying that she strongly disagrees. Now, can we see whether there will be that behavior executed or not based on these statements? So the next statement for perceived norms would be my friends and family will be supportive of my choice and attempt to quit. Okay, so that is the statement. Do they strongly agree with it? Do they think that they will be supported or will they not be supported? So Josie thinks not really, she just disagrees. And again, Rose strongly agrees that yes, she will be supported. Then there is behavioral control. I think I can quit smoking whenever I want to. Rose thinks that she can. She agrees with this statement, and that gives her 4 points. And Josie thinks she can't. Okay? Now, all three of these factors, when analyzing, will be correlated with intention. So, intention here, the statement is, I intend to quit smoking within the next month. Okay, this could be within the next week as well. And that might change responses. But Rose says she strongly agrees that she does intend to quit smoking within the next month. Whereas Josie doesn't really think that she is going to be able to do that, or doesn't intend to do that. And then the final statement is of the behavior itself. I will quit. The difference is I intend. Intending is that, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. But I will quit is saying for sure that I will do this. I will execute this plan, or I will engage in this behavior. So the final statement will be, I will quit smoking within the next month. This is kind of saying, I'm affirmative, I'm sure this is going to happen. And Rose is saying, yes, of course, and strongly agrees, whereas Josie strongly disagrees. Okay, so using a 5-point Likert scale, you can basically get points and turn this into a data matrix. Okay, so each of the questions will be put together like the same way, and all the participants that you have, you will put their scores under each question, okay, based on whether they agreed, they disagreed, strongly agreed or disagreed, or were neutral about it. Okay, and then you would then run it through correlational analysis to see whether there is, for that group set, a correlation between attitude and intention, perceived norms and intention, behavioral control and intention, and then finally intention and the future behavior. Okay, and when you do correlational analysis, all the scores that you get from the analysis are between -1 to +1. Okay, if it's 0, that means that there is no correlation at all. If there is a number that you receive that is higher than 0, that means that there is a positive correlation, and this is kind of a continuum. Okay, if it's 0.01, that means that there is a very weak correlation, but if it's like 0.99, that means that there is a very strong correlation. And on the other hand, if it's below 0, it means that there is a negative correlation, wherein when one variable increases, the other one decreases. Okay. So here, if it's again 0.05, that means that there's a weak correlation. If it's 0.95, that means minus 0.95, that means that there is a strong correlation. Okay, and for the sake of the data matrix and for the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior, it has to be positive correlations for it to validate the theory. If it's negative, that means that there is some factor that is increasing while intention is decreasing, which is not the case. Okay, so if Rose has high a really positive attitude, and her intention is really low, that means that there might be something here. Or if everything is high and she doesn't have an intention, that would not make sense. It wouldn't validate this theory. Okay, so that is the basic idea of it. And what can happen from such analysis or a data matrix is that you can arrive at a formula from, if you've done a lot of research with high samples and even a meta-analysis of different samples and different researchers that are trying to predict the same behavior, right? Then you can come up with a formula to predict the future behavior of other people in that population. Okay, and that is what we refer to as predictive validity of this theory. Does it have the ability to predict future behavior? Okay, and that is the basic intention of this theory as a whole. Okay, so this is how data is usually collected and analyzed in this model. So the example that I'm going to go with, and I already have explained here with the questions, is of smoking, and rather quitting smoking. Okay, so here the example is of someone who thinks smoking is bad for health. Okay, smoking is expensive, which is again increasing their attitude against it. Okay, but at the same time, they also think it is difficult to stop because it is addictive. So their attitude, all in all, is kind of confused. okay? It is moderate. They aren't sure because they know that it's not good for their health, but they also know that it's expensive, but they also know at the same time that it is difficult to stop and that it is addictive in nature as already. So this could actually affect their perceived behavioral control. And then there's the subjective norms, which shows that I would be the only smoker or non-smoker in my peer group. So everyone in my peer group smokes, and that would put me in a position where I would feel like an outsider. Okay? And my friends do like smoking, so it is likely that they will pressurize me or not support me in my attempt to quit. Again, this is an example. It is not necessary that friends are like that. Friends can be supportive. And then there's the final perceived behavioral control, which is I don't think I have the self-control to stop smoking whenever I wanted to stop. Okay, all these three factors, which are quite negative because they have a confused attitude, they feel some amount of pressure to fit in and are worried if this would make their friends see them differently. And then there's the idea that they aren't sure if they have the control or within them or the capability and confidence within them to stop. Okay, so then this would lead to a weak intention. Okay, and weak intention then basically means that they don't end up quitting. Okay, so that is basically another example of how you can use the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior to understand a future outcome, okay, or future behavioral outcome. So your task for the rest of class is to choose one behavior that you want to explore in terms of the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior. There are several different options that you have. One that I really am interested in would be social distancing during the virus outbreak. So a person's choice to or not to socially distance, okay, and how that is influenced by their attitudes, their social norms or subjective norms, their control over it, and their intention. Okay, so then there's exercising to achieve an ideal body goal. There's stopping video games. Sylvia last year did one on pro-social behavior, the choice to help someone. Okay, so there are several different options. You choose the behavior that you want to explore. Okay, you will first choose, and you will send me on chat which behavior you have chosen. Okay, and we will see if that is appropriate or if that is feasible to investigate in our school. So once you've chosen the behavior, okay, you are going to create a Microsoft Forms survey to test the theory of reasoned action and planned behavior. And this is the template. Literally, you have to make statements for each of the components, and you will add options of strongly disagree, disagree, neither agree nor disagree, agree, and strongly disagree. So it's going to be 5 different questions with that scale. Okay. So you're going to create your own form for that behavior. Okay, and you're going to make the statements specific to your behavior. Don't use the same questions because mine was on the quitting of smoking. So you will first create the forms, and over the weekend and by next Wednesday, which is the 8th of April, you will get 10 people to respond to your form. Okay, and in the next class, what we're going to do is we're going to statistically analyze the behaviors that you have chosen and the data that you've collected and see whether it fits or the theory fits into that behavior or predicting that behavior. Okay, so that is going to be the task for the rest of class. And a little heads up on what, apart from the statistical analysis of the data that you collect, you will be working on a graphical representation, which kind of looks like this, of your chosen behavior. Okay, so you will create like this is, I think, something Sylvia actually drew. So you will create a graphical representation of, let's say, social distancing, and you will look at your data and you will explain that behavior based on your data. Okay, so that is going to be something that you will do next class, and you will have time to do that. So, but for now, just work on creating your Microsoft Teams. Send me a copy once you're done so that I can let you know whether the questions are accurately phrased or not, and if there's something that you need to change. That is your task for the rest of class and something that you need to do before the 8th of April next class. So make form, so decide behavior, make form, and collect data. Okay, 10 people minimum. Okay, all right. So let me know if you have any questions.